Okay, this is part two of Gas Tank Tanic. I know there's about one, maybe two of you that have been waiting for this episode. So this is the second installment of Gas Tank Tanic. So where we left off, the little mounting brackets were on backwards. I had to swap those around. The tank was virtually done at that point, but little did I know, getting it in the truck was going to be a pain in the ass. So that's enough of this. Let's get to it. Start the intro. Okay, so this is kind of embarrassing. I just realized something once I did this. So this is indexed. The fuel sending unit is indexed by these tabs like we talked about. 1, 2. I just realized something, that these straps I put on the wrong sides. It needs to go over here closer to me because this sending unit should send the fuel inboard toward the middle of the truck. And these are outboard. So there's a frame rail that runs right here. So this would be in a configuration right now to mount this on the passenger side of the truck. And the fuel tank in this truck goes on the driver's side. This is a single tank configuration. So I completely the bed on these. I need to undo it and swap these around the other way. Okay, so that's a good lesson. As you can see, I swapped these around the other direction because I wasn't thinking about it. One of the straps is bigger than the other, so it goes in the bigger half of the tank. I did manage to figure that out on my own, not after I hooked it up the wrong way. And one's smaller, for the smaller part of the tank. Again, it took until I tried to put this bracket on this side of the tank, I realized I had, I fucked that up, but that's okay. I sorted that out, was like, okay, we're good. And then I realized when putting the sending unit in that these lines index toward the inside of the truck. These brackets mount to the outside of the frame rail. So this needs to go this way. Some people will look at that and say, oh, I knew from as soon as I saw it the first time that he had the straps on backwards. And you know what? You're probably right. But last time I looked around, your ass wasn't here. So I figured it out on my own. Okay, this is the very next step. Everything you need to put the sending unit in the fuel tank. So one is the unwrapped sending unit. Got the bubble wrap off of it, everything. I looked at the float, which is this guy here. Looked at the sock, this guy here. Made sure all that is as correct as I can imagine it would be. I'm sure there's a way to test it with an ohm meter. I don't feel like doing that, so I'm not gonna. This fuel tank's easy enough to get out. If it's bad, I'll get another one. No big deal. You're gonna need a screwdriver to help drive the lock ring. You're gonna need the lock ring, which is this guy here. The gasket, which is this guy here. And if you have some petroleum jelly or some Vaseline, then you'll use that on this O-ring. But since I don't, I have this limited edition Gary Powers chapstick that I'm going to use. And for those of you who don't know, that chapstick is 98% petroleum jelly or Vaseline, essentially in stick form. So if you don't have Vaseline to do something that requires Vaseline, you can use chapstick. It just smells like vanilla. So with our chapstick in hand, vanilla, you just apply a generous coating to the O-ring. Some people will tell you that's a terrible idea because it'll leak, blah, blah, blah. The reason why you do that is so there's a level of lubrication between the tank, between this rim right here where this gasket sits, between that rim and the lock ring, or not the lock ring, I'm sorry, the sending unit. So when you run that lock ring down, this is going to move around a little bit. You don't want it to bind, and you certainly don't want that to tear. So give it just a dab of lubrication on both sides of it That way it has some play. It'll stay in its little channel. You won't have any problem. Put our sending unit in, float first, then sock with the lines indexed toward the inside of the truck, and then that's it. Now the hard part, which I probably won't be able to do on camera, is to set this lock ring. So you can see this lock ring has these tabs here, right here and right here. So those are the stop tabs. This little angled piece here goes under this tank strap, and you should theoretically be able to turn this. See if I can do it. You should be able to push down on the sending unit and turn this into place. See, it's starting to go. Let's look right here. So this tab needs to be all the way over here on this orange tab. And there you go. That is fully seated into this tab here, here, and the third one here. So this sending unit is in here. Now, we do have to do something with this vent valve. You will probably laugh, but I'm going to show you what I'm going to do about that next. Now, the vent line is supposed to go to charcoal canister, as I mentioned before. So what you need to know about hose is that there's two kinds of hoses in every car. There is fuel rated hose and non-fuel rated hose. For a gas tank, you need, see if you can see it. It clearly says it on there, fuel hose. If it is not fuel hose, then when the gas vapors get to it, it will eat the rubber. Heater hose is not fuel hose. Vacuum hose is not fuel hose. This has to be labeled as fuel hose. Caps are the same way. Some people will tell you you can get vacuum caps to go over this and it's a whole deal. It's made just to do this job. And that's true. But it has to be fuel rated. If not, this is going to leak. So I'm going to make a fuel rated cap with this hose and this. Yep. Steel reinforced epoxy. JB Weld. And there's our fuel rated cap. So I'll put a worm gear clamp on here once I get that. This needs to cure for 24 hours. Package says 4 to 6 hours, but I'm not in a hurry. It's here on the ground. Now, some of you will ask, will that work? And I'm not 100% sure if it's going to work, but I mean, we're fixing to find out. That is a completed fuel tank. Still going to put the filler neck and the vent line back on, but we can do that when we put it in the truck. Everything is on it now. Is it show quality? If by show quality you mean me showing you, yes, because here it is. Will it absolutely get the job done? Yes. This is a DOT approved fuel tank for that truck. So there is no state regulation that's going to say there's anything wrong with this installation. This thing is good to go. So here is the top of the sending unit. I didn't even realize this was still up here. I thought it was all inside the tank. But you can see right here, it's a 2-line setup. So this one here should be the supply line. This one here should be the return. Supply, return. This line right here is electrical line. That's actually what sends the signal inside the cap to let you know how much fuel is in it. So we're gonna try to get this off without damaging this line because it looks pretty crusty. So these clips are fairly well rusted. I'll probably have to cut all this garbage off here. Here's the old sending unit. As you can see, there's not a whole lot left of it. But this right here is what I was talking about. That clip completely rusted off there. Right, that little button is where you get the signal from for the dash. Tell you how much fuel you have. This is the ground. So on these old trucks, sometimes you'll have a bad fuel reading back to the tank or back to the gauge that if you have fuel or not. You see how corroded this negative cable gets. A lot of people pull these floats out and replace them thinking it's the float that's the issue. Typically it's the ground that's the issue. Pull this ground clean up both sides, the tab here and the frame rail on the truck, and bolt it back on. That should resolve your issue. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here we are back under the truck. Fuel tank is in. This was an absolute pain in the ass, but I did learn a couple things from this. So right there, right above that, right here, that's the hard fuel lines going to the fuel pump in the front of the truck, so they come off the top of the tank. If you follow that line back, it goes up over the frame rail right there and it runs back this direction. Now it ties in to this. Right here is a fuel tank selector valve. It's a solenoid valve. So there's a switch in the cab of the truck that swaps from primary to secondary fuel tanks. So this truck has a secondary fuel tank that I didn't even realize was here. So basically all I did was I bypassed this valve, this solenoid, and just routed from the main line coming in here to the main fuel tank. So that's the big fat line here and the main return back here. Even with the worst possible gas mileage this truck could possibly get, a 16-gallon fuel tank should still take this truck about 200 miles, which is further than I ever really care to go without stopping. So there's no sense in having an auxiliary tank. I may do it just because, but as of right now, this is gonna remain in here, and these excess fuel lines and this auxiliary tank is gonna remain in here, but I have no intentions on doing anything with it right now. Okay, so that's it in the truck. And I think, I like the little orange peeking right there. I like that, it looks good. Now there is still something we have to do in here. I have to connect this fuel neck. I got to replace this line. I thought I was going to have enough to do it, but I don't. So we'll get one of those in here, and then I have a completed fuel tank. So the last part is in. That fuel filler hose, I don't know if you remember, but I said, I'll cut it. This should be easy enough to replace. I was wrong. That hose is incredibly difficult to find. Now, to find the hose online, you Google the truck and everything, and it shows up with whatever part number. So it's a 12-inch 90-degree bend, 1 3/4 fuel neck. Now, that will not work on a step side pickup, which is what I have. So those filler necks are only good for the fleet side trucks. So what I ended up getting was a FNH 122 filler neck. It's for 87 to 97 F-150 with some slight modification. I managed to get it to fit. So the thing about these old trucks is, the old cars in general, is that they're all built the same, but they age different. So depending on what you got and what you're trying to do, you may have to modify some parts to fit. That's it for this. I got the fuel tank in the truck. It's still on blocks, but I mean, hey, it is what it is. This thing's still very much a work in progress, but we're one step closer to this thing actually running and driving. We still got to do brakes and some type of cooling system. So I have a mess to clean up. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, like, subscribe, do all the things that you do, and let's see what happens to old Blue 82. The fuel tank is finally in, and I only have one extra bolt. Damn, I'm getting good at this.